Imagine a military pact forged in the furnace of medieval warfare. A brotherhood of steel that has remained unbroken for over 6 centuries. This isn't just a page in a history book. It is the oldest diplomatic alliance still in force today. But how did two distant kingdoms, separated by the ruthless Atlantic, swear to defend one another with blood and iron in an age defined by betrayal? In the heart of the 14th century, Europe was burning. The 100 Years' War saw England and France tearing each other apart on blood-soaked fields. In the Iberian Peninsula, Castile, a growing colossus, aligned its spears with the French, circling Portugal like a starving wolf. The survival of a nation was at stake, but the seeds of this bond were planted long before. In 1147, English crusaders raised their swords alongside Portugal's first king, Afonso Henriques, to liberate Lisbon from Moorish control. By the 1300s, trade was flowing like rivers of gold. Robust Portuguese wines exchanged for fine English wool. Necessity was the mother of this brotherhood. On this deadly chessboard of kings and cold ambitions, the first blood pact was about to be sealed on eternal parchment. Prepare yourself to witness how trade became honour and how commerce evolved into a life-or-death commitment. The epic saga of the Anglo-Portuguese Alliance begins now. By the year 1372, the long shadows of war were already stretching across the Iberian Peninsula. King Ferdinand I of Portugal, a sharp, visionary ruler, was searching for a counterweight to the looming Castilian threat. He found his answer in John of Gaunt, the powerful Duke of Lancaster and son of King Edward III of England. At the Treaty of Aljubarrota, they forged a pragmatic pact, mutual support against their common enemies. It was a cold calculation of power, but it was only the beginning. 1 year later, on June 16, 1373, destiny was officially sealed in London. Edward III, the battle-hardened veteran of the 100 Years' War, and Ferdinand I exchanged the official scrolls. The terms were absolute. The crowns of Portugal and England shall maintain a perpetual friendship. This wasn't just diplomatic fluff. It was a formal promise of military aid and the protection of merchants on both sides. Together, they created a naval axis across the Atlantic, a direct challenge to the combined might of France and Castile. The seas began to churn with activity. Barrels of robust Douro wine arrived at English docks, while fine fabrics from London draped the Portuguese courts. What started as commerce was rapidly evolving into deep political trust. But in the Middle Ages, fate is a cruel master. In 1383, King Ferdinand died suddenly without a male heir, plunging Portugal into the most terrifying crisis of its existence. As the throne sat empty, the Castilian colossus began its march to swallow Portugal whole. This was no longer about wine or wool. It was about survival. The true strength of the alliance was about to be put to the ultimate test. Portugal would call, but would England answer? The trial by fire was about to begin. October 1383. Portugal plunges into total chaos. King Ferdinand I is dead, leaving no male heir. His only daughter, Beatrice, is married to the King of Castile. Under the Treaty of Salvaterra, the Portuguese crown is set to be swallowed by their massive neighbour. The entire realm shudders at the prospect of total absorption. The dream of independence is fading. But Lisbon is a powder keg. Merchants, nobles, and commoners refuse to surrender the freedom their ancestors bought with blood. Out of the shadows rises Dom João, master of Avis, the bastard half-brother of the late king. Proclaiming himself the defender of the kingdom, he leads a nationalist revolt. Beside him stands the legendary Constable Nuno Alvares Pereira, a military genius who begins organising peasant armies with unprecedented discipline. Castile responds with brutal force, invading the Alentejo and putting Lisbon under siege by land and sea. Dom João knows the grim reality. Alone, Portugal will fall. He remembers the blood pacts of 1372 and 1373. Emissaries are dispatched across the turbulent Atlantic to the court of Richard II of England. Their mission? Demand the fulfillment of the alliance. They need steel, they need soldiers, and they need them now. The great chronicler Fernão Lopes records these tense negotiations. King Richard II hesitates, but the geopolitical math is clear. To weaken Castile is to strike a dagger into the back of France. The answer finally arrives. England sends a vanguard of 200 elite longbowmen and knights under the command of Sir John Ivy. It is a small force, but in the hands of the right commander, these archers are the most lethal weapon in Europe. Castile isn't intimidated. King John I of Castile assembles a colossal war machine, 35,000 men, reinforced by French heavy cavalry and Aragonese allies. They march into the heart of Portugal to crush the rebellion once and for all. Don João doesn't retreat. He chooses ground. The stage is set. The fields of Aljubarrota are waiting. The Anglo-Portuguese Alliance is about to face its baptism of fire, and the history of Western Europe hangs in the balance. August 14, 1385. The Plateau of São Jorge. The fate of Portugal hangs on a single afternoon. On one side, a colossal machine of 35,000 Castilians, bolstered by the elite heavy cavalry of France. On the other, a meagre force of 6,500 Portuguese led by King João I and the brilliant Nuno Álvares Pereira, supported by a small but lethal vanguard of 200 English Longbowmen. Outnumbered 5-1, the Portuguese chose their ground with surgical precision, using the hills and marshy terrain to neutralise the heavy cavalry. Nuno Álvares deployed a revolutionary formation inspired by the English victories at Crécy and Poitiers. He placed a solid wall of spears in the centre and positioned the English archers on the elevated flanks. The Castilians, exhausted from a gruelling march, launched a massive frontal assault. It was a suicide mission. As they charged into the Portuguese spears, the English archers unleashed a rain of arrows from 300 metres away, sniping commanders and sowing chaos in the enemy ranks. Within hours, the invincible army was in full retreat. The Castilian king fled for his life. The result was staggering. Thousands of Castilians lay dead, while the Portuguese lost barely 100 men. This victory birthed legends like the Baker of Aljubarrota, a common woman said to have crushed Castilian skulls with her oven shovel. Whether folklore or truth, it symbolised a nation united. Now, if you want to see the full, brutal breakdown of this conflict with tactical maps, exact numbers, and the visceral details of the carnage, I have a complete video dedicated only to the Battle of Aljubarrota right here on the channel. Make sure to watch it after this. Link in the description and in the cards above. More than a victory, Aljubarrota wasn't just a one battle. It was the first true baptism of the Anglo-Portuguese Alliance in combat, with English and Portuguese blood mixing on the same field. The treaties of 1373 were no longer mere ink on parchment. They were a living, breathing reality. The road was now clear to turn this brotherhood into an eternal pact. Windsor was calling, and the alliance was about to transcend war itself. May 1386, Windsor Castle, England. The dust of Aljubarrota has barely settled when King João I and King Richard II meet to immortalise their brotherhood. The Treaty of Windsor is born, not out of poetic sentiment, but as a cold calculated document of mutual survival. It established a perpetual friendship, league, and alliance that exists to this very day. The terms were surgical. Each kingdom promised to aid the other against any aggressor. If one made peace with a common enemy, the other had to be included. Merchants and citizens were granted reciprocal protection in both territories. This was medieval pragmatism at its finest. As the Chronicle of Fernão Lopes notes, the Portuguese ambassadors returned home with more than just a piece of paper. They returned with the official recognition of the House of Avis. By acknowledging João I as the legitimate king, England effectively checkmated Castile on the diplomatic board. But the ultimate seal of the alliance wasn't made of wax, it was made of blood. In 1387, King João I married Philippa of Lancaster, the daughter of John of Gaunt and granddaughter of Edward III. This wasn't just a royal wedding. It was a fusion of the two most resilient bloodlines in Europe. Under the gaze of the Iberian nobility in the Cathedral of Porto, a familial bridge was built that would never be dismantled. From this union rose the Quinta Geração, the Illustrious Generation. Their children, including King Duarte and the legendary Prince Henry the Navigator, would go on to change the world. The roots of the Portuguese Age of Discovery were watered by this medieval alliance. As historian Joaquim Veríssimo Serrão points out, Windsor marked the beginning of Portugal's enduring independence in the European theatre. What began with English arrows at Aljubarrota culminated in royal parchment and a marriage that changed the map of the world. A military pact had transformed into an unbreakable dynastic bond. Castile was left to lick its wounds while Portugal finally breathed the air of freedom, but this was only the beginning. This union would survive empires, revolutions, and world wars, proving itself stronger than time itself. The legacy of Windsor still echoes today. 1386 was more than just a treaty. It was the birth of an alliance that defies time itself. To this day, the Treaty of Windsor remains the oldest diplomatic document still in force in the world. It wasn't just a medieval relic, it was a living shield. Reaffirmed in 1643, 1703, 1815, it guided Portugal and England through wars, revolutions, and the collapse of empires that once seemed eternal. When Napoleon in 1807, it was the British Royal Navy that escorted the Portuguese court to Brazil, preserving national sovereignty in the face of total annihilation. Through the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, through monarchies, dictatorships, and democracies, the alliance stood firm. Why? Because it was built on cold-blooded strategy, not romanticism. To kingdoms on the periphery of Europe, Portugal on the Atlantic and England in the North Sea united against the continental giants of Castile, France, and Spain. It was, and is, a masterstroke of geopolitics that has lasted 640 years and counting. The chronicler Fanuo Lopes captured the spirit perfectly. Portugal made itself, and with the help of the English, without Aljubarrota. Without Windsor, and without the blood of Philippa of Lancaster, Portuguese history would be unrecognisable. Without this bond, there might have been no age of discovery, and no independent Portugal as we know it today. In an age where modern leaders sign agreements that crumble in months, look at Windsor. It is living proof that words written on medieval parchment can shape the destiny of nations for centuries. But the saga here. As I mentioned, the full video of the Battle of Aljubarrota is already live on the channel. Find the link in the description and in the final cards. Do you want more epic medieval stories like this? Then hit that like button right now. Subscribe with notifications on. And leave a comment below. Do you believe Portugal would have survived without English help in 1385? Your answers guide our future videos. Share this with anyone who loves medieval history. Strength to your spears, honor to your shields, and eternal glory.